Let's get to some winners and losers of the offseason presented by Discover. I'll start with a loser, everyone that has to endure Greg Wyshynski this season because the Devils are going to be amazing.
Look, amazing is a lovely term to use. I'll settle for better than embarrassing, which is kind of where the bar was set last year. Look, Jacob Markstrom, Jake Allen, the best goaltending battery the Devils have had, maybe post-Brodeur, due respect to Corey Schneider. The fact that they've got some adults in the room now with Brendan Dillon coming in, with Brett Pesce coming in, they've got some players in there that obviously are going to be able to augment the young core that I think maybe wasn't necessarily ready for primetime last year. It all comes down to cohesion. It all comes down to whether these pieces fit together, and if they can fit together and create improved defense in front of better goaltending. And that, friend, comes down to your guy from Toronto, Sheldon Keefe.
Yes.
And whether or not Sheldon Keefe is the right coach for this job. I was around Devils camp before the season. I tend to believe that there's a little confidence that things are going to work out, but it's a little rocky to start as they try to figure out where everybody fits and how to play together. But it's a good mix right now, and obviously goaltending solves all problems.
I read a story online that Sheldon Keefe met some fans after a preseason game, and the first thing he said was, "Sorry for the loss." And the fans were like, "It's okay, it's just the preseason." And I could just imagine him in that moment after years of being in the Toronto, the Toronto sphere, one of the hockey capitals of the world, and just the juxtaposition of the fans treating him in a different way than they might have in Toronto. Like it must be a completely different vibe for him, just even as taking a job in a different location.
Well, there's a completely different vibe for him because there's only 3 people at his press conferences. No disrespect.
And you're one of them.
To the Jersey media. But there's a huge difference between the pressure cooker of Toronto trying to get a team that is, cursed to get back to the Stanley Cup final, and then taking over a team like the Devils, which is young, on the come up, and obviously trying to reverse their fortunes from last year. Last thing I'll say about the Devs is that, I think that he's the right guy for this job in the sense that he's got a bit of defensive acumen. If you watch those Leafs teams, they were always pretty decent defensively. And then the other thing, obviously, is that he knows how to manage young talent. I mean, he's a guy that helped foster the leadership capabilities of an Austin Matthews. He navigated the day-to-day soap opera that was Willie Nylander at times. I mean, he's a guy that knows how to work with young stars. The Devils have a galaxy of them, and so he becomes a very interesting for this team. Look, I have massive expectations for the Devils. I don't know if that's necessarily going to work out, but I do know that I like any team that felt like they had a rocket strapped to them to win. Then the next season they get kicked in the how do you do. I always like that team to bounce back real big if conditions change in year 3.
Speaking of bouncing back, a winner for me, the Chicago Blackhawks. I liked their offseason very much. I liked their acquisitions that they made. They picked up guys like Tyler Bertuzzi, Teravainen, Taylor Hall is going to come back healthy now. I just think that there's a great core of people around Connor Bedard, and I absolutely love the appointment of Nick Foligno as the captain of that team.
Yeah.
I think that he's one of the great... I don't think we talk about this enough. I would love to bring him on to the Drop to talk about... I'll have a whole interview on leadership. I think he's one of the great leaders in sports of our generation. This is now the second team he's captaining in the National Hockey League. From seeing how he is spoken about and talking to his peers about him, he's one of the more respected players in the NHL, certainly high up there. And now for him to be able to lead a franchise that has essentially the superstar of tomorrow, I think that's a great choice.
Well, first off, Nick, if you're watching, we'll put in a good word with Messier about that leadership award. Okay, we have an in with him. We know him pretty well. We see him in the cafe all the time. We can maybe put in a little good word with you. The other name that I like for the Blackhawks in the offseason was Alec Martinez to come and try to give them a little bit of stability on the blue line. It might be a brief visitation before he gets moved at the trade deadline. But those are the kinds of moves that you make to try to stabilize things, try to move the team forward a little bit. What a charmed life for Bertuzzi, by the way. He gets traded to Boston a couple of years ago, starts threading passes to Pasternak. He signs in Toronto for a season, plays with, Austin Matthews. Now he gets to play with Bedard. Not bad. Congrats, fantasy owners who have Bertuzzi in your keeper league.
That's like Taylor Hall. Like if you look at his career line mates, like it's pretty insane who he's played with in his life.
Do you like Chicago enough though to say that they could be a playoff team?
No, not this year. No,
Okay.
absolutely not.
Right.
But I like the upward trajectory.
Yeah.
I like it a lot. I like it for Bedard's development, and we'll definitely be talking about Bedard on this and future episodes of The Drop presented by Discover because there's a lot to talk about with him. Quick winner from me, Jaromir Jagr. Why am I saying Jaromir Jagr? Big news with him, obviously, is he has decided that he will retire from professional hockey at the end of this year. He's still scoring goals and dishing apples in his final year at 53 years of age. He's in his 50s. But also, he now has a spirit animal in the NHL in Trevor Zegras, who has completely taken his hairstyle from the 90s. And I just can't wait, Wish. I cannot wait for the moment that Trevor Zegras scores a goal and takes off his glove and salutes the crowd.
It'd be perfect. It'd be perfect. I was struck by the Jagr news for a moment and then realized I don't believe it. This man's the Ric Flair of professional hockey. Okay, he's going to be 70 years old, trying to score goals. Much like a 70-year-old Ric Flair is still doing flippies in the corner. Is this actually the end for Jagr? I mean, I hope so, because at some point I'd like to go celebrate him in the Hall of Fame, and that can only happen if he actually does retire at some point. But something tells me that, like, Kladno will need a win at the end of the season to stay in their division or whatever. And Jagger's like, he sees the double J symbol, like the bat signal in the sky. And he's just like, all right, I'm coming to save you, Kladno.
Last point here. 72-year-old Jaromir Jagr.
Yeah.
NHL game. Breakaway. Andrei Vasilevsky Jr. in net. Looks at Jagr and says, I'm sorry. I love you. And just windmill saves. Big windmill save. Why don't you give us our last loser?
Last loser is franchise icons. I mean, again, one team's decision is another team's glory in the sense that Steven Stamkos, the Tampa Bay Lightning, decide to let their captain walk so they can sign Jake Gensel. It's a very sad situation. I'm really looking forward to that return visit from Stamkos to Tampa Bay to see what that situation's like. But, the idea that Steven Stamkos is no longer a member of the Tampa Bay Lightning is jarring. Less jarring is the idea that Jonathan Marchessault is no longer a member of the Vegas Golden Knights. The Golden Knights go through franchise icons like most people go through Kleenex. But that being said, the man was a Conn Smythe winner. When you think of the Golden Knights, you think of Jonathan Marchessault. And so even though we've become accustomed to this idea that no one is safe, even the greatest misfit of the Golden Misfits in Vegas, it's still going to be very odd to see both Stamkos and Marchessault playing for the Nashville Predators. But again, at the end of the day, like, the Lightning made their call, the Golden Knights made their call. The beneficiary is Barry Trotz and the Predators, who are going to be really good this year, and a big reason why is Marchessault and Stamkos.
That's a really good point. You don't often see reigning individual trophy winners in the NHL switch teams in the offseason.
It's just like, he's not reigning, but like, it's just like,
or whatever.
It's the notion of like how important he was to the team. And again, in Marchessault's case, it just seems like they've made a decision to go in a different direction. In Stamkos' case, I mean, let's be honest, they kind of opted for the younger model.
Yeah,
right. And there's a certain amount of what is that comeuppance going to look like when he faces the Lightning for the first time.
How could I forget? It was Connor McDavid, the latest skater on the losing team that won the.
Well, I mean, it's easy to forget because when they gave away the trophy, no one was there to take it.
That's right.
So I mean, it was like
John Cena was there accepting the award on his behalf.